All right, now joining us to unpack the IEC's briefing and other related matters ahead of the 7th general elections is Mr. Terry Tselane. He's from the Institute of Election Management Services in Africa. Mr. Tselane, good evening and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good evening to you and to your viewers, and thank you very much for having me.
No, it's a pleasure as always to have you with us. So very comprehensive briefing that we listened to. Almost can be expected given that it's the eve of very important elections, as many have said. Your take on the fact that 937 voters have been processed in just the past 2 days, and we heard that it's the highest ever.
I think it's quite impressive, and I think the Commission needs to be commended for that. The most important thing also about the past 2 days is that it has provided the Commission as a platform for tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So today was like a dry run for them, and whatever hiccups that they experienced during these 2 days, I'm certain that they will deal with those issues to make sure that the process tomorrow moves smoothly. So even if we may have experienced some minor hiccups here and there, I believe that they've got the capacity to deal with those hiccups and make sure that our process tomorrow goes smoothly.
Mm-hmm. But would we say the hiccups are quite minor if you have IEC officials that are threatened in certain instances?
Well, the issue of the security of the electoral officials, it is the responsibility of all of us. We have a responsibility as a society to make sure that we safeguard this process, that the officials of the Commission are able to do their responsibilities, they're able to perform their responsibilities without any intimidation, because it is in our interest that we have a free and fair election. So political parties, political leaders, they've done extremely well thus far, and I think they've got to begin to rein in on their supporters to make sure that the process is protected and defended. Mm-hmm. It is not only the responsibility of the IEC to protect its staff, it is the communities that we have, it is the political parties, and in addition to that, of course, law enforcement agencies, but most importantly, the communities within which the IEC officials are located, mm-hmm. are the ones that have got to defend the Electoral Commission and its material and make sure that we can have a smooth election.
And ultimately defend our democracy themselves. But now when we look at the amount, the 937 voters that were processed now, it seems that there was an attempt to perhaps predict what the voter turnout would be tomorrow. And it seems the IEC is of the view that based on the numbers they've seen in the past 2 days, that indeed there should be a decent turnout for tomorrow. And we heard that they're expecting around 70%. For them, that would be a good day at the office.
Well, we can only hope so. We can hope that the turnout is going to be very high because the legitimacy of the elections is really dependent on how many people really go out and participate in the process. So we will see whether today has actually inspired other people who may not have thought of going to the voting station to go all out there and make sure that they vote for the party that they believe will best represent their interest.
Mm-hmm. Many have been talking about the level of political tolerance that has been displayed in the past few months of campaigning. And it seems the IEC and others are of the view that parties have to a certain extent conducted themselves fairly well. We've heard today that the campaigning period has been relatively peaceful. Where do you stand on that?
I agree completely. The political parties and leaders have really shown maturity in terms of these elections. They have exercised restraint. They have made sure that people are able to campaign. We have not heard of a situation where there are no-go areas for any of the political parties. All the political parties could have rallies without any incidents. And I think it's something that really augurs well for the future of this country. Mm-hmm. And it is something that must actually be encouraged. And hopefully even tomorrow, we're not going to be experiencing anything untoward.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose also it's quite important the way they've conducted themselves, given that many pundits had stated that these are by far the most consequential elections post those of 1994.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the performance of the political parties in the past few years, you're beginning to see that we no longer really have one dominant political party. And then because of that, the level of contestation is very intense. And the fact that we can actually be able to see political parties working together, obviously, contesting and being robust in terms of the campaigning, but at the same time being tolerant towards each other. I think it's something that really needs to be, that the political parties needs to be commended for.
And then the electorate and voter education. There was a question posed by one journalist around that we used to have programs that encourage voters to actually go out and make their mark. What was your take or your view on just what we heard as a response to say that the amount of voter education is relative to the budget that the IEC would have?
Yes, but also I don't think we should actually put the blame on the IEC. The issue of voter education is a joint responsibility. It's a joint responsibility between civil society organizations, political parties, and the Electoral Commission. And obviously the Electoral Commission, when it's got budgetary constraints, it would rather use that budget to reinforce on its logistical arrangements, because that is the most important aspect. And that should actually give the civil society and the political parties a platform and an opportunity to educate the society about the electoral processes. And I don't think that we have done enough as a society in terms of voter education. There is a lot that we could have done to educate people about this process, particularly because it's for the first time now that we're going to be finding new entrants, including independents participating in these elections. We're supposed to have taken this work very seriously as civil society as well as political parties to make sure that we can educate people about the whole process.
Mr. Tselane, as expected, journalists did pose the question around President Cyril Ramaphosa's address, where we do know now that the Democratic Alliance as well as MK Party have lodged a challenge against that specific situation where the president, when wrapping up the sixth administration, went on, according to them, to even campaign on the very day, as they say, abusing his authority or that specific position. Your take on just those developments?
Well, it is within the powers of any political party that is not happy with the process to approach the relevant authorities. And I think the beauty about the South African system is that if a person is not happy with the decision of the commission, or if there is something untoward in the process, they can go to the electoral court. If they are not happy with the electoral court, they can go to the constitutional court. And I think it is within their powers and the capacity to approach the electoral court in this case. And there are two issues, as you've correctly pointed out, that appear to be issues that have been raised there. The first one is the issue of abuse of power, but the second one is that there is also abuse of public funds, and in terms of section 87 1G. So I'm not too sure how the court will rule on that particular aspect. Sometimes the issues of the legal issues are very complex, and then we can come with our own understanding of issues and interpretations. But at the end of the day, it is the electoral court that will take a decision in terms of how it sees that particular issue.
Indeed, and we await that ruling. Mr. Tselane, as always, thank you very much for joining us. That is Terry Tselane from the Institute of Election Management Services in Africa speaking to us.